A fixed reserve is not the most common type of reserve, but when a credit card processing company wants to control their risk, they have a bunch of mechanisms to do that. A reserve is one of those mechanisms. A reserve is let's say you're processing $100,000 a month. The most common form of reserve is for a provider to say, hey, I'm going to keep 10% of that money in reserve for 6 months on a rolling basis. That's the common term for a reserve. One of the common terms. That means that you process $100,000, they keep $10,000 in reserve, and then 6 months later, they'll release that $10,000 to you, and they'll keep doing that. And it's a mechanism for them to protect themselves against chargebacks and against you closing your account. A fixed reserve would be an alternative to a rolling reserve, and instead they would say, we're not going to keep 10% for 6 months or on a rolling basis. Instead, you can just give us $50,000 up front or $60,000 up front, and that will be our fixed reserve. Another way that term might be used is they'll take 10% for 6 months, and once they have that fixed amount, that $60,000, if you're doing $100,000 a month and they're keeping 10 every month for 6 months, it would be fixed at $60,000 total. And that's kind of the two ways you'll hear fixed reserve being used in the context of a reserve for a merchant account.